thrills to ever have enough time to play at all. You know everybody wants to walk in someone else's shoes. Everyone's forgotten who they are. Such a grind.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Otter Creek in Rio Grande, and another video based on working on the Two Nubs Mine. And for sure, the goal of this video is to get everything completed through this area, at least up to right here. I'm still kind of indecisive about what's going to take place in that area because I just don't know. I'm still fooling around with the idea of maybe that needs to be another large dock, but I don't know. Also, I want to go ahead and include some of the things that I'm going to do with the trees just to see if they work. I'll go ahead and kind of show you what my process is. And I didn't really talk about this particular shrubbery or low tree, which, you know, I'm kind of looking at as a gamble oak, I think. So what that is, it's this, which I believe is jute rope. And it's just a matter of, you know, cutting it in half, or, you know, not in half, but in little pieces. And, you know, it kind of starts out like this, and you glue up one end of it, then you splay it out so that it ends up looking like that. And then, you know, you paint it and you put on foam or leaf material as desired. And I can tell you, I am very happy with the way it turned out. I do like the way that looks. I didn't really care for the process or the material, because this stuff, it seems to be really like the threads in this rope are really short, and as you go to try and glue the limb structures, they just kind of pull off and get everywhere. So I'm going to try some different rope, and I hear sisal rope I think might be a little bit better. So I'm going to see if I can find some of that, but I might include some of that process as well. All right, let's get started on something. Here's one of the things that I've done, and I asked the machine to produce, you know, the 5 most common evergreen trees and some common species of deciduous trees, specifically in the area between Leadville, Colorado and Basalt, Colorado. Originally, it did not return ponderosa pine as one of those, because, you know, I mean, AI is AI, right? I mean, you might get good material, you might not. Definitely, the ponderosa, I think, can be found at the lower elevations. I understand maybe at the higher elevations, maybe not, but I'm not going to be overly concerned about that part of it. I want to have a variety of species to choose from when I'm building. And so I've got the average height and then kind of the maximum height. I've also got, you know, where basically does the first branch structure come out of the trunk at what general height should that be at? And I'm also looking at what is the span away from the trunk at the first, that first branch structure that comes out. You know, how far out from the trunk does it come? Because that's going to help me, you know, hopefully come up with the correct shape, you know, in something that's, you know, kind of a scale shape, or at least that's the idea. Now, I'm not going to get overly concerned about any of this. I'm not going to really get down into the weeds like this, but I wanted something for reference that can help me create more than one kind of tree for the layout and hopefully provide a little bit of variety. Now, if you're wondering what's going on with the airbrushing, I thought, I might be able to come in with a little darker color and create, something that somewhat looks like a shoulder and just provide a little extra something to look at. I think having just a little bit of dark mixed in with the bright kind of helps. My rationale has always been that grass and weeds will grow in the lower areas, the more fertile soil, if you will, and that in theory should maybe be just a little bit darker than everything around it. So kind of the process that I've developed is, starting with the dark areas of soil, then I will chase those areas with this burnt grass color. I don't remember what Woodland Scenic's number it is off the top of my head, and then, don't cover up, obviously, the dark areas of soil. That way you have a little bit of transparency through that catches the eye. And after you get that, then you start coming through with your weeds and working things in the vertical rather than the horizontal. Now, because my water bottle tends to blow away the fine particles of the green grassery, I come in with pure alcohol and kind of daub it in. And then before it has time to kind of start to dry, just go in again with a dropper and hit it with a matte medium. Now this can leave a tide mark, which you can see if all of this is what I mean by tide mark. I found that if when you first laid down the dirt you did a really good job of getting everything fully saturated. The tide marks will be less when they get wet the second time. I'm not sure why that is, but you know, the first time you hit your dirt with water, it's generally darkens up a little bit. And you know, that's why I try and make sure that everything is really well saturated with water. And then when you come back and do this with your grass later, it's not quite as bad, which is not to say that there won't be any tide marks, but it'll be a little easier to deal with by coming in with the airbrush later on. Everything that I did yesterday, it's the next morning from the previous clip. Everything I did yesterday, which was from about here to here, has dried up. So everything that's kind of green in this area, you can see is dry. And then from this area back, I've just got finished gluing, and I don't know if you can see it from the camera angle, but there's a lot of dark areas here that is letting you know that it's wet. And nothing that I did yesterday left a tide mark. So that's always good news. That's one less thing that I'll need to go back and do with an airbrush, which I'm still going to airbrush this area probably regardless of that, but I won't have to do anything concerning tide marks. Now, one of the things that I feel like is kind of missing from the overall scene is tall grass. And so, you know, back over here, you know, back behind us where I've already done a lot of work, I haven't put a lot in there. And, you know, that scene to the right of all of the structures is a little less important than the structures themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some static grass right through here. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to like it or not, so I'm going to start in just one small area and see what I think, and kind of make a decision moving forward whether or not I want to continue with that. I decided to go ahead and go full bore with static grass. And I don't know if you can see it, but somewhere right in through here, I kind of changed and created, or didn't create, but I changed and went with a kind of a lighter yellow color of static grass, where kind of what's back here is a little bit more green. And the idea was that, you know, maybe off in here it's a little drier or something like that, especially along the side of the road. Now, you know, after you kind of get that put in for the first time, I go in with a piece of stocking hose on the vacuum cleaner, which you've seen. And, you know, that's just to kind of pull everything up and get rid of the worst of it. I'm going to let it completely dry overnight, and then I'll need to come in without the stocking and vacuum up all of the stray stuff that's in here right now. I think I'm really liking how it looks. I'm not sure if I need a larger bush in here somewhere. I don't know. And of course, I've got all of this back here to do, and then I'm going to be real close to be finished with everything except for what's right in and around the structures. Let's go take a look at what I'm doing with trees at the moment. I think I mentioned in the last video that I was going to try and build something that could help create these wire armatures. So this is the tree board. And it's a pretty simple concept. I'm sure I'm not the first person that has ever done this, but I've got this line right here, which is representative of ground level. And then I've just measured up to 110, which is probably plenty big enough for anything I need on the layout. I think the ponderosa, a well-developed ponderosa, can be up to 130, but I think this works for my purposes. And then I've got multiple different little holes here drilled. For the most part, they're 5 feet apart from each other, 5 scale feet. And then I can just move this nail to kind of help with routing the wire. So, you know, kind of an idea here, if you're not following me, is if I put one of these, I think this is 18 gauge florist wire, if you can see that or not. I can put one there, and you can see that from here up is about 95 feet. And if I put another one there at ground level, then I get up to about 105 feet. And then you can just kind of keep adding these. And you can also add, you know, smaller ones to kind of flesh out the trunk if you want the trunk to be wider. And then now you've got something like that. And what I do is I take black tape and I kind of start right where the trunk would be, and I go up to where I think I want my first branch to be. And I've also got measurements all the way up, so I can kind of judge, you know, according to the species, where that branch should be when it first branches out from the main trunk. So that's kind of the concept. And then, you know, I'm using 22 gauge wire for the lower structures, and, you know, maybe beyond a half, maybe 2/3 of the way up, I switch to this, which is 26 gauge. I would like to try one with maybe 24 and 28 just to see. But as you can see, here's one that I've done. And one of the things that I felt like I was struggling with was all of my branch structure on the bottom of the lower end of the tree ended up being not wide enough away from the trunk, and then like maybe too short up at the top. Because if you're using your thumb, you know, if I need to come all the way out here to, you know, 30 feet or so, I can't do it with my thumb. So that was the idea there. And the other thing, if you're using this 28 gauge, you end up with just one loop, right? So you end up with this one loop because you're using one string of wire and you're coming out, you're looping around, then you're twisting. You end up with this one loop, which, especially on your larger branch, on a deciduous tree, you end up missing a little bit. Like in my opinion, you probably need maybe 4 of these off of the same main branch. So another thing that I've kind of started to do, and I haven't tried it on what's going to be a pine tree yet, but you can take a wrap of the 26 gauge and fold it in half a couple times, and then wrap it around your other branch so that you're still creating a larger branch structure here. And then you might take 2 of those out this way and end up creating another branch structure here that's going to help flesh all that out. So that's where I'm at on that. Now, another thing is, even if you do that, it kind of, in my opinion, on a deciduous tree, I'm not getting the fullness of the tree that I would like. So I'm messing around with this stuff, which is like a hecky grass mat. And you can see it's just a fibrous material that they've glued this leaf material on, and you can take and stretch it and pull it apart. And I'm thinking that might work a little bit better for a deciduous tree. And here's kind of what I'm working on right now as far as experimentation goes. Now, it's still a little flat, and these first couple of branches, I just tried to glue it right straight on the wire, and you can see it's pretty flimsy. So I thought, well, I can't hurt it by going ahead and gluing on some of the 12 millimeter. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish this up with 12 millimeter, and you can see I've actually even gone in and added some 12 millimeter to the bottom side of this, and I'll probably do the same thing here. And I figure I'll end up painting it, which I think that'll be okay, because I still plan on putting super leaf material on top of this stuff after I get it to where I want it to be. So that's kind of where I'm at on the trees at the moment, and I'll probably pop back in and show you the end result eventually. So I'm very pleased with the way this is turning out at the moment. I've still got quite a few things to do. This area, from about the throw out bar this way, I've still got some shrubbery work to do. And of course the whole scene, I think eventually I will come in with the airbrush and some buff color, some dust, and kind of dust everything down. My grass through here is pretty pale green. I would like to maybe take that down to something a little closer to straw, but maybe not completely. I'm gonna experiment with that when I do it. And of course this, let me see if the video is even really kind of showing it. Yeah, let me move the camera. I'm still kind of up in the air with this. It needs a lot of work still, and I am going to go ahead and put groundwork on it, you know, grass and weeds and all the things that it needs to kind of bring it to life. But I'm still also kind of thinking that maybe I can do something else in here, either with another structure, maybe in combination with another dock. I'm just not 100% sure. But I know one thing, I'm not gonna get carried away with that just yet. I'm gonna go ahead and work this up probably as my next kind of major scenery item. Now let's take a look at the trees. I think I've added 3, maybe 4 more trees since the previous segment or 2 segments. So I've got this, which I think right now is probably my best looking tree. And this one, which is a little closer to what I might want for an aspen. I did not paint it white. I'm just kind of going for maybe a narrow leaf cottonwood tree. I'm thinking maybe that's what it represents. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's a tree. And, you know, I've got an idea for another maybe 3 trees in kind of a little cluster right here that's kind of in the back of my mind. I'm going to try and work on and make it to where everything else is kind of background to what's going to go on here, which I want to add a little more detail. I'm looking specifically at something that's going to have deadwood in it and catch the eye just a little more right in this area. Now, the huge deciduous tree here, which I had no idea at all what I wanted this to be. I built this armature a long time ago. We're talking maybe 6 months, 9 months, maybe even I've had that for a year. I can't recall. And now I think that it completely overpowers the scene at the moment. So that tree, I don't think is going to stay there. I'm better than 95% sure that tree is not going to stay there. I've got one smaller but similar I think will work there. And I've got another idea for this somewhere else. Now, it's not really composed per se. I just stuck it in there after I got all of the leaf material put on it, and I haven't messed with it since. I need to, you know, run a soft bristle brush through it and knock off everything that's going to fall off before I continue on. So I might compose it a little bit differently. Maybe it'll grow on me, but I think it's too big for the scene. Overall, though, I think it's definitely coming along. I'm very happy with it. Got a lot of work still to do. I don't know if I probably won't document doing anything with that. I'll probably do it and throw it back up on there. When I come back to the Two Nubs the next time, I will definitely be working on the areas in and around the structures, getting the cabling into the building, so on and so forth. I need to spend an entire weekend just on details. I've got lots of details that I need to paint up, and I probably even got more details that I've got in bags somewhere that I've forgotten that I even have that I want to add to this scene, because there's still lots of work to do on it. But it's coming along. Thanks for watching, guys. We will see you next time on the Otter Creek in Rio Grande.